We now have our positionally aware input and are ready to enter our first encoder, which starts with multi-head attention. The cleanest way to learn attention is to first focus on single head attention. And once we cover that, we'll explain how that extrapolates out to multi-head attention. Let's quickly remember how we got where we are. Our tokenizer received our initial input string and output a vector of size s. Then our embedding layer received that vector of size s and output a matrix of size s by d, where d is the number of dimensions. Finally, our matrix was positionally encoded, which did not change its shape at all. The attention layer consists of three weight matrices, all of which are size d by d. These weight matrices are the query, key, and value matrices, respectively, and it's worth noting that they are independent of one another. The weight parameters are unique to each. Now, as we've already touched on in passing, data can be represented a few different ways in machine learning. First, we can have a scalar, which is frankly just a single number. As we've seen, we can have a vector, which is an array of scalar values, and we can have a matrix, which is a vector of vectors. The critical mathematical operation for machine learning at large is the dot product. The dot product is computed by taking two vectors of identical length, multiplying their corresponding indices together, and then adding them up. As a quick example, let's assume we have two vectors. The first vector is a row vector with the values 1, 2, 3, and the second vector is a column vector with dimensions 4, 5, 6. 1 will be multiplied by 4 and added to 2 multiplied by 5 and added to 3 multiplied by 6, resulting in a single scalar value. Let's now assume that we have a second row vector with the values 10, 20, 30. We can then compute the dot product between the second row vector and the same column vector, resulting in 10 multiplied by 4 plus 20 multiplied by 5 plus 30 multiplied by 6. And we'd follow the same process for a third row vector with the values 100, 200, and 300, respectively. Now, we could think about this as three independent dot products between three different row vectors with a column vector, or we could also view this as the dot product between a matrix and a vector. If you keep in mind that a matrix can be thought of as a vector of vectors, then the output of this operation would be a sequence of scalars which can be viewed as a vector. A cheat sheet to keep in mind is that a vector dot a vector is equal to a scalar, a matrix dot a vector is equal to a vector, and a matrix dot a matrix is equal to a matrix. To demonstrate a matrix dot matrix, we can just add a column vector to our original example, which follows the same process as the initial column vector, but creates three new scalar values and a new vector output, which can now be viewed as a 3 by 2 matrix. A 3 by 2 matrix is a matrix that has three row vectors and two column vectors. A row vector will have shape 1 by n, where n is some value greater than 1, and a column vector will have shape n by 1, where n is still some value greater than 1. Keep in mind that the first number in the shape is referring to how many rows there are, and the second to how many columns there are. With that understanding, in order to compute the dot product of two vectors, the number of columns in the row vector, or row matrix, and the number of rows in the column vector, or column matrix, must be the same. An easier way to remember this is that the two inner numbers must be identical, and the result will always be the two outer values. So, as long as my two inner values are the same, my row matrix can have 300 rows, and my column matrix can have 42 columns, and it won't be an issue. As long as the two inner values are the same, say 6, then the result would be a 300 by 42 matrix. This is why a row vector of shape 1 by 100,000, dotted with a column vector of shape 100,000 by 1, would still result in a shape of 1 by 1, which is simply a scalar value.